Everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and I am here to give my commentary on the Kirk and Kerrion Franklin situation that unfolded over last week. And I know I posted two videos where I basically just showed the back and forth that was taking place, and not really the back and forth, because once Kirk apologized, he kind of like used his PR team to get his message out, and he did, I think, one interview over the week, but for the most part, everything that was coming out was from Kerrion. And so when I got up this morning, I went to the grocery store, it was like 8 o'clock this morning, and I was surprised that the local radio stations had Kirk Franklin songs on loop, like they were playing them back to back. And then I'm sure in black churches across America, some preachers are probably using, what took place as a backdrop for their sermons. And so I got to thinking about the whole situation, reading all of the comments, that were being left on the two previous videos. And, it seems that everyone has an opinion, right? And once you put things on social media, you can expect to get opinions on that. And so, the line was drawn in the sand, and people are either Team Kirk or Team Kerrion, Team Church or Team Unchurched, Team Old School, Team New School, Team Happy Childhood, or Team Traumatic Childhood. There doesn't seem to be a lot that falls within the middle. And so as I was covering the story, and I was thinking, trying to find balance as to what could have transpired to lead to this. A lot of people are saying that Kerrion is 33 years old and he's being childish and disrespectful. Other people are saying that regardless of how old he is, his father needs to listen to him, see that he's hurting, and, pretty much console him and try to figure out what's going on, despite the fact that Kirk has said that the family has been in counseling for years and that Kerrion doesn't want to be a part of the counseling. And so it's like at some point you have to say, I've given enough. What more can I give? And I definitely don't have the answer to the problem. But one thing that did come to mind for me was the fact that Kirk Franklin has been featured a lot on the OWN network. And you guys know that OWN is the Oprah Winfrey network. And I started to go back and look at some of those episodes. And I believe that he has been on there like 3 times, maybe more, over the past 6 or 7 months. And so I was thinking maybe that's what has triggered Kerrion, seeing his dad and his family members on these shows, where they're speaking positivity and love and light, about family and unity and all of this stuff. And maybe it triggered him. And so that's pretty much like where my thought process is. And so we have to remember, that our personal experiences are not their personal experiences. And so just because you've experienced something in your childhood and you reacted the way that Kerrion is acting, it doesn't mean that your story is their story. And, if you were someone who grew up in a family, where parents cursed you out or whatever, and you just learned to deal with it, it doesn't mean because Kirk Franklin cursed his son out that his son has to accept it and be okay with it. He does have the right to say, I don't want to be talked to this way, just as Kirk has the right to say, I'm your father and you're going to show me some respect. And so there's a lot of information and misinformation, being floated around on the internet. And at the end of the day, these are real lives and real experiences being played out before our eyes on social media. And so I've read through the numerous comments, on my previous videos, which led me to do this video. And so I just want to give you guys Tracy's point of view. So I give this disclaimer up front that I grew up in the church, and as an adult, I've actually worked at a church. And however, I'm not, one of those holy roly people, that's by the Bible and always preaching down to people. And so I'm not going to act like, Christians aren't human people and entitled to moments of outrage. And as Donnie McClurkin said in his son, we all fall down, but we get back up, and a saint is just a sinner, who kept getting back up, right? And so many Christians have had and will continue to have to get back up because nobody is perfect, and that includes Kirk Franklin. So trust me, I have seen some things in churches and have experienced unholy Christians through my journey. I know a lot of pastors, some personally, some through working in the church, like when they come in to do revivals and that type of things. And I'm here to tell you that there are cursing pastors, okay? What's the man that's on IG, the Thaddeus Matthews or something like that, who calls himself the cursing preacher? So preachers do curse. They do get angry. They do have outbursts. And we have whorish ministers. We know we got ministers. Look at Jamal Bryant, who was just in a controversy, about fathering all these different kids, but New Birth chose to renew his contract or to let him stay on. I thought it was interesting that Jamal's anniversary is actually in December. And so all of this was unhashing, I believe, in December, all the controversy about what was the show? Real Housewives of Potomac. All of that was unfolding. There were rumors out that he was going to be fired. But here we are in the month of March, and they are celebrating his second anniversary. And so his good and positive things that he's done for the church far outweighs the negativity that took place, with his ex-wife being on this reality show and convincing him to appear on the reality show. And so it's no different with Kirk Franklin, his mark on the gospel industry and the music that he produces and the careers that he's helped obviously far outweigh what is happening in his personal life, and that is being shown by the love and support that he's receiving. And it's not just the pastors that are supposed to live to a higher standard, but also the congregation, the people in the church, the people that serve in, ministry leadership roles. We all have to understand that, church is not a place of perfect people. It's imperfect people, that are trying to serve the Lord and do all of that. And so we really have to take the whole Christianity part out of the argument, because this was a situation between a father and a son. And so we have to see the human in them and know that people have their breaking points, no matter whether you go to church, believe in God, or whatever. And so the two things that have bothered me the most about the comments is that one, Kirk Franklin is gay. People, several people said that. And so I don't know why that's always the go-to, like why we always want to accuse people of being gay, like that is supposed to hurt them or harm them. I'm not sure, but Kirk Franklin has never come out and said that he was gay, so I have no reason to believe that he is. And then the second thing was he was touched inappropriately when he was younger. And so again, I could not find anything to support that. In all the interviews that I've listened to, he seems to imply that he witnessed ungodly things as a child involving family members and what they did to the children in the family. And from what he says, it appears that it was his sister that was assaulted, that he was not assaulted. And like I said, I did research trying to find this information. I don't know if he actually came out and said that this happened to him personally and physically, you know, in some other, like in a book or something. I was unable to find that. Every interview that I was able to come across, he alluded to the fact that it was the sister that was assaulted, not him. And so before I get into why I believe Kerrion may be responding to his family's recent appearances on the OWN network, there is a little biography for those not familiar with Kirk Franklin. And trust me, sometimes people watch my videos and then they'll come back and say, who are you talking about? Like, who is this person? Or I had to go research this person. So I always like to give backstory on who I'm talking about. So Kirk Franklin is a native of Fort Worth, Texas, and his birth name was Kirk Smith. At the age of 3, he was adopted by a woman named Gertrude Franklin. In most interviews, he just refers to her as an elderly widow woman that took him and his sister in, but some references allude to the fact that she was actually his aunt. Not sure if it was an aunt on the mother's side or on the father's side. And I couldn't find any information about whether or not he actually knew who his birth dad was. But it seemed like I did come across something with a man, but I may have forgot to click on it. But anyway, if he knows who his dad was, most of the articles that I read for this did not indicate that he knew who his father was. And so he was adopted after he was abandoned by his mother. And the Gertrude Franklin lady didn't have much, so she used to recycle aluminum cans to raise money for Kirk to take piano lessons when he was just a little kid. And Kirk excelled and was able to read and write music while also playing by ear. And at some point, he legally changed his name from Smith to Franklin. And so at the age of 7, he received his first contract, but Miss Gertrude turned it down. He did join the church choir and became music director at the Mount Rose Baptist Church over the adult choir at the age, I think he was around 11 years old. And so in his teens, Kirk rebelled against the strict religious upbringing, and in an attempt to keep him out of trouble, it says his grandmother, but I'm not sure if they were referring to the Gertrude lady, but someone, a female role model, arranged an audition for him at a professional youth conservatory associated with a local university. And he was accepted, but later he had to deal with a girlfriend's pregnancy. And this eventually caused him to get expelled from the school for bad behavior. So Kirk was able to study music with Jewel Kelly and the singing chaparrals at Oscar Dean Wyatt High School. He continued under her tutelage and ultimately became the pianist for the choir. When he was at the age of 15, he witnessed the shooting death of one of his close friends, and Kirk then decided to return to the church where he again directed the choir. He also co-founded a gospel group, the Humble Hearts, which recorded one of Franklin's compositions and got the attention of gospel music great Milton Bigham. And so Bigham was the musical director of the Georgia Mass Choir. And he was impressed, by Kirk Franklin and his talents, and enlisted him to be lead for the Dallas-Fort Worth Mass Choir in a recording of Franklin's song, Every Day with Jesus. And so this led to Bingham hiring Franklin, who was 20 years old at the time, to lead the choir at the 1990 Gospel Music Workshop of America convention. On January 20th, 1996, he married longtime friend Tammy Collins. When they wed, they each had one child. from previous relationships. And so Kirk's son, Kerrion, was his child, and Kerrion was 8 years old. And Tammy had a daughter, or has a daughter, by the name of Kerrion, who Kirk has adopted. And she was 7 years old when the two of them married. And so as a couple, they have 2 children together, a daughter named Kennedy, who was born in 1997. And Kennedy, so far, is the only person I've seen to respond to Kerrion's comments on Instagram and social media. And they have a son named Keziah, who was born in 2005. And so Kerrion, the oldest daughter, got engaged to a guy named Max Nakawasa in October of 2015, and they have since married and had their first child. And so Franklin is behind the successful careers of several gospel artists and has won numerous awards, although he doesn't sing. So I think that was like the most interesting thing about Kirk Franklin, is that he has created all this hit music, you know, been behind the careers of people like Tamron, but doesn't sing a lick. And so he is one of the most successful gospel artists in history of the genre, and gained fame with his Kirk Franklin and the Family, and then later God's Property, and he may have had a couple other groups since then. And he is the host of BET's Sunday's Best, and a month ago he was showcased with his band and choir in the latest at-home Tiny Desk concert on NPR, and they were playing live from his studio, Uncle Jesse's Kitchen, in Arlington, Texas. And so although these great things have happened with Kirk, he has had a lot going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And there has been like some dissension among some of the choir members, you know, about how they created this music and didn't get the notoriety or fame that they, you know, wanted. And so there are those behind the scenes stories like that. And although Kirk Franklin first appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2005, remember when Oprah had her talk show, he and Tammy, and as a couple, together with their kids, minus Kerrion, have appeared on the show several times. And so on OWN, they have appeared on They Call Me Dad, Black Love, and Behind Every Man. And then coming up next week on Easter, he is a part of a gospel showcase that is going to happen on OWN for Easter. It's like an Easter gospel concert that's going to appear on the OWN network. And then he's also been on TV One's Uncensored. So it has to be mentally painful for Kerrion to not only witness his dad's success and not be a part of it. In his words, he was very much a part of the family until he was in his late teens, but it's equally unnerving for him to have a negative perspective on their family relationship and then see the happy family, you know, being interviewed and him not being a part of the shows or mentioned at all. And if he is mentioned, you know, it is in an afterthought or a random statement. Add to that, we don't know what Kirk has said about Kerrion in any of the spotlight features that may have been left out, you know, or edited, because we know that, you know, these shows edit content, you know, to drive the narrative that they want to get out. So he could very well have talked about Kerrion and we just don't know it and it didn't appear. You notice in the collage at the start of this video, Kerrion's husband, who she became engaged with in 2015, appears in family photos. And so if Kerrion's angst is that he has been erased from the family, you know, what do you think happens, you know, when he sees the new family photos that are coming out now? And he's seemingly, like in his mind, been replaced by an outsider. And as he may have felt after his dad married Tammy and adopted her daughter Kerrion, you know, he felt like he no longer had a special place in his father's life. And that is what Kirk is basically saying is taking place, is that, you know, everything was fine. They were all happy. And then all of a sudden, Kerrion started acting out and feeling some kind of way. And so to Kerrion, he is probably thinking that he's been erased and he's simply acting out. Unfortunately, it isn't a good look for a 33-year-old man. So then I got to thinking, like, why wasn't he a part of They Call Me Dad? You know, we don't know if he was invited to be on that show and he declined. Maybe he couldn't promise that he wouldn't act a fool, you know, since he was harboring these ill will feelings. Maybe it was because they hadn't talked in several years and they just didn't know how he was going to respond. Or maybe he was going through something, you know, internally. There has been talk that he has mental issues, that he allegedly, you know, is on drugs, you know, things that we don't know and haven't been able to confirm. But maybe that's why he wasn't invited to be on some of these shows. And so if he wasn't invited at all, you know, Kerrion has to reflect on his life and life choices, you know, to see why he's being treated as an outcast and can't be trusted, you know, to be a part of a show about They Call Me Dad, where he can talk about his dad and what life has been like growing up with him. And so despite whatever tension is going on in the family, I can only imagine that it was hurtful for him, you know, to sit back and watch Kirk, Tammy, and the other kids, you know, on the show, and they're happy and talking about what a wonderful father he is, and then him not be a part of that. And so on the YouTube channel, Armand Wiggins Show, the other day, he shared a video that allegedly was sent to him that, you know, allegedly shows Kerrion and two other people. We didn't really see their faces. I don't recall seeing anybody's faces, but you could see parts of their body and hear them talking. And so they were in a hostel, which is basically a fancy name for a boarding house. And Kerrion evidently lived with these people, but at some point had been kicked out. And then it's around Christmas time and he's back for some reason. It seemed to me that Kerrion was baited into an argument. There was like some going back and forth, but it didn't really come across as an aggressive argument. And to be honest, it really sounds staged, like they knew this was going to be recorded and released at some point. And remember, he has a production company, and so it wouldn't surprise me if this was all staged. And then also I came across a video where he was acting in this video. So that's why I think that this really wasn't real. But anyway, at the height of the argument, one of the people that he's arguing with decides to put on a Kirk Franklin song to kind of trigger Kerrion. And then Kerrion kind of conveniently says, "Oh, you're going to play my molester song." And so I was just like, okay, what's really going on here? And so to me, you know, it just sounded very staged and revealed more about Kerrion. Like, I think they were talking about drugs in the video, and then maybe I misunderstood, you know, one of his statements, but it implied that Kerrion may be bisexual, or maybe he was responding to the guy who I believe was gay, but his words didn't come out correctly. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but it did insinuate that maybe him and the guy in the video and him and the girl in the video had all, you know, at some point he had had sex with both of them. But I may have misconstrued the video, and if I did, please leave it in the comment and let me know what was really going on in that video. So for those that want to believe, you know, the worst about Kirk Franklin and the church, you know, they quickly ran with the narrative, and it was like their aha moment that everything Kerrion is saying is true, and that Kirk Franklin is a horrible monster that needs to answer for what he has allegedly done to his son and the trauma that he has caused, and that Kirk is actually the one that is behind this toxic relationship, and he is basically gaslighting Kerrion, you know, by the way that he is responding to what has transpired. Of course, you know, Kerrion was basically saying that he was going to continue to release information. He talked about an interview that was supposed to have been upcoming where he was going to tell his whole story. And so even though Kirk seems to have kind of, you know, stepped away from the situation, Kerrion, you know, he gets quiet and then he re-emerges. So we really don't know what state of mind he is in. And so as for his father, Kirk Franklin has done numerous interviews over his career, and his truth about his life has never wavered. And so in an interview with Sway in the Morning back in 2013, Kirk Franklin touched on a host of topics and traumatic experiences, including how he was raised and how his beginning played out, and so we have to keep in mind that Kirk Franklin has endured a lot through his life, and what he has endured has definitely impacted the relationship that he has with his children, and it's impacted it in a way that he wants to give them everything that he didn't have, and he wants to provide a more stable life than what he started out with, or even growing up with this elderly lady. And I'm sure, having to go to church all the time and not having the freedom to do a lot of things. And then he talks about, having this porn addiction because of the trauma that he experienced early on in life. And then I got to thinking, did the traumatic experiences happen in Miss Gertrude's house? Because if he was adopted at the age of 3, he went to live with her at the age of 3, how much could he possibly remember between 1 and 3 years old, and all these things that would have happened to him and the sister? And so I'm sure if I go and find a book or something that's been written about Kirk Franklin, these questions will be answered. But that was something that, came to mind. And so in that interview, he talks about how everything he's been through is what made him the man that he is today. And so he was quoted as saying, "I was adopted by a 64-year-old lady, and we were raised in really difficult times, standing in line to get the block of cheese, getting the tough jeans," which I'm thinking are like cheaply made jeans, from the bottom of the denim barrel. And so he said, "I had a sister that had a real bad drug problem. She spent over a decade in prison. She was into prostitution. I was 15 when my, dude got killed," referring to this friend. "And when he got killed, it was when I got closer to my faith. That's when I really just developed my own relationship with the Lord." So he also admitted that he impregnated a girl at the age of 15, and that he paid for her to have an abortion. He even talked about a few family issues that he experienced as a kid, saying that there was incest in our family as a kid. There was some abuse. I was a little boy. My little sister, there was the R word. There were some ugly images that we got introduced to as kids at about the age of 8. And so from about the age of 8 to about 29, I struggled with pornography, not only pornography, but I was very promiscuous. Kirk says that part of the reason he struggled as a young man, was because he was out in the world seeking the love that he never received from his mother. And then Sway asked him if he has had same-sex sexual relationships, and he said no, that was never his thing. He has only sought the love and attention from women because he's always tried to fill the void left by his mother. And then he shares a story about the difficulty of being adopted and knowing who your biological mother is, and knowing that she is in the same city as you and just doesn't care about you. And so I think that some of what Kerrion is feeling is like, I know my dad is over here in his mansion with his other family members, but I can't be a part of that. And I really want to be a part of that, but I don't know how to be a part of that. And so there are some similarities in what both of them, have felt in their lifetime. And so he tells a story about his mom, promising to take him and his sister to the fair one year, and how they, got dressed, went and waited on the corner, and all day long they sat there, hoping she was going to come, and, that her Monte Carlo was going to appear, but it never did. And I think a lot of children, I know my youngest daughter, we even laugh with her to the day, because whenever her dad, said he was going to come and get her, And she actually lived with her dad on and off. And so the times that she was living with me, and he would say, "Oh, I'm coming to get you for the weekend," like she would always get dressed, go sit outside on the porch and wait for her dad. Her dad was never on time. Like he always showed up, but he was never on time. And even as a grown woman, 27 years old, like her dad said, "Oh, we're going to go play top golf today." Like she gets dressed and she's waiting and waiting, and she still has that look on her face. So I can imagine Kirk Franklin and his sister sitting out there, waiting for that mom to come, and then, she didn't show up. And so this is a little off topic, but since he mentioned, having the sister that I had no idea he had and had never seen before, I did some research on his sister and came across a 2015 article, and he is quoted as saying, "For over 10 years, my younger sister was incarcerated in a facility in Texas. She was in love with a young man who was a drug dealer, and he introduced her to selling drugs, but using drugs as well. And when he was arrested for drug trafficking, she was arrested along with him. And so she served her time, and she was brought before the review board, in which she gained her release. But then she got back on drugs, got back into prostituting, and now she is serving 30 years in prison." And so he didn't say in the interview why she got 30 years, but I am going to assume, okay, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to assume that she was probably incarcerated under the 94 crime bill, the repeat offender rules, and where they can basically, if you keep getting arrested, they can, and some states call it the 3-strike rule. I know here it's the 3-strike rule, where if you get arrested for the third time, they can sentence you to 25 years to life in prison. And so it sounds like because she was doing drugs and prostituting, and that's what she had served the 10 years for, that they then gave her the 30 years, or there could have been terms to her release that if she did something else, that she would be rearrested and given this harsher sentence. And so I thought that was very interesting, and it just leads to the notion that Kirk Franklin has experienced so much in his life, and whether you are Team Kirk or Team Kerrion, that we have to be Team Humanity and understand that we are all a product of our environment and of our upbringing, and the decisions we make as adults are often reflective of how we came up in life. So let's go back to the OWN show, They Called Me Dad. And so in that episode, which aired in September of 2020, there's a clip with his younger son, Keziah, where he's preparing to leave for college, and he's starting his sophomore year. And so the full episode includes his wife, Tammy, daughters Kennedy and Carrington's husband, Max, their newborn baby Shiloh, who was born, as I said, in 2020 around March or April. And it also included Bill Collins, who is Tammy's dad, and Pastor Tony Evans, who is a prominent pastor in Texas. And so he talks about being a father and his struggles as a youth. And it's so important for him to be a great dad to his kids. And that may be where he went wrong with Kerrion, is that he was trying too hard to be a great dad, and things just kind of went haywire. And where Kerrion needed discipline, maybe he didn't give him that discipline because he knew what it was like to not have a safe environment. And so he overcompensated, trying to give that to Kerrion. And, some kids, would respond to that gratefully and be happy and okay. And then other kids, they might, want to take their freedom and their ability to have so much and do so much and direct it in the wrong direction. And so each of Kerrion's siblings shared what it meant to have Kirk as a dad. Carrington talks about being adopted by Kirk after he married her mom. And she says she was fine. Yeah, she was 5 when they met, but she was 7 when they got married. And that they built a bond over time, even though she didn't like him in the beginning. And she realized that all she wanted was a father, that it didn't matter whether it was her father or not, but that any man who was willing to be a father and a good husband to her mother, was worth it. And so she changed her attitude, and now they have a great relationship. And so this is the juxtaposition of Kerrion, who already had a mother and probably felt that Carrington and Tammy were taking his dad away. Then came Keziah and Kennedy, and he probably began to create this narrative in his head that he no longer, had a dad, or that his dad had abandoned him. And so as a mother, I can tell you firsthand, that my oldest daughter to this day, like she is 35 years old or something, 35 or 36, and she still thinks that I favor my youngest daughter, or that my youngest daughter had a better life than her. And so they are almost 8 years apart and have different dads. And so my youngest daughter's dad, has been incarcerated since she was 7 years old. And my youngest daughter's dad, she has him in his life. Him and his wife live within walking distance. So he's always been there. And now that my youngest daughter's dad has married and his new wife has 3 children, she now feels, that he cares more about his new family than he cares about her. But trust me, he doesn't. He loves his daughter. It's just that his priorities have changed, and he lives with the wife and her younger son. And then, kids often gravitate towards the mother. So his wife's older children probably spend more time over there than my daughter spends over there. And then she also has this mindset that her dad needs to reach out to her. Her dad needs to invite her to do things and want to spend time with her. And if he doesn't do it, then she's okay with it. And I'm like, it really doesn't work that way. But if that's how you want to roll, that's how you can roll. And so I definitely can understand how Kerrion felt some kind of way when Kirk and Tammy got married, and then he started this additional family. And to me, it's like the bonus family. But Kerrion didn't see it as a bonus to now have siblings. He really wanted to be the center of his father's attention, because that's what he had been, for the first 6 years of his life. So in the episode of They Call Me Dad, Kirk's son Keziah, like I said, is preparing to leave for college. And so Kirk is really a proud dad. He's excited. He's enthusiastic. And so he comes in saying, today's the day, 1 down, 1 more to go, referring to Kennedy. I almost get my house back. He's celebrating. And then he exclaims this multiple times. And then he says, my boy is getting ready to go back to college, y'all. And he's going to get his own apartment this time. Come here. Let me show you the young king. And so he's like, what up, boy? What's up? They just have this camaraderie and this happiness and this elation and joy that if I'm Kerrion, I'm not happy about this. If he's watching this show, I can see him being in his feelings. And then Kirk goes on to say, my youngest son is on his way to his 2nd year in college, and I am scared to death. I am scared to death. I'm a little sad, man, because I'm going to miss you. Well, I'm going to miss you. You're the baby boy, man. And man, I was there when you started, and I am here. I am watching you about to get up and get out and be your own grown man now. He goes on to talk to the producer, and he says, being a Black father is very important for me to make sure that my children get the baton, and for them to understand the price of making sure that you don't drop it. You're trying to make me cry before you leave, talking to Keziah, and I'm not going to do it. He says, so even at 20, I have to trust him, and I got to let him fly, because how high he flies is my report card as a father. And then in the clip, Keziah, has something weird going on with his hair. It's like long and curly and flopping all over the place. And so he's joking with Kirk and telling him not to touch his hair. And Kirk jokes back and says, well, it's a wig anyway. And then I go back to Kerrion trying to figure out like what his state of mind is. And so, as in the pictures of Kerrion, he has this low, when he was younger, he has this low haircut, but in the adult version of Kerrion, he has these long dreads. And so I'm thinking, what was that conversation like when he went from this clean cut kid to the kid with the long dreads who's showing his creativity, and, he's not dressing, traditionally. He has his own style and his own flair. And like, was that a point of contention, in their relationship? And so, just a lot going on, and just picking up on these little bits and pieces of things, from being a mother and watching my own kids, like these little things that really a parent doesn't really pay attention to, but for the child who feels that they are treated differently, these little things really bother them. And then those little pieces become bigger things that eventually, ends up being what we see now. And so at the end of that clip with Keziah, he tells the producer that based on what I've seen in class, Keziah won't fail. And if he does, I'll be right there to catch him. So once again, does Kerrion feel like he wasn't there to catch him, that he let him fall, that he let him suffer, and now he's a 33-year-old man that's, still trying to find his way in life? And so that was an interesting tidbit. And so now we have the infamous video that Kerrion leaked and set off this firestorm and all this dialogue and all this conversation. And so his sister Kennedy jumped into the comments, and the two, had their own exchange. You guys know in that video, Kirk Franklin basically cusses Kerrion out and, tells him that he'll beat his ass, and other, more colorful language. But that's what it boiled down to, is you're not going to disrespect me. You keep running your mouth and I'm going to come over there and knock your ass out, okay? Or break your neck, something like that, he said. So we learned through the exchange with his daughter Kennedy after, things hit the fan last week, that Kerrion dropped out of college, but he had the same opportunities as everyone else. And so Kennedy Franklin responds under the Jet magazine post. And you guys remember he made this post with a cover of an old issue of Jet magazine. I don't even think Jet is still in publication, but basically it was them as a family. And Kerrion was basically saying that that was the last time that he was allowed to be in a family photo. And so Kennedy responds and says, this wasn't the last family pic we took, laugh out loud. I'm really tired of this. If you want to air out things, I can do this too. I still have the screenshots. We all have screenshots and recordings too. What was so bad about your childhood? Laughing my ass off. You were a black privileged boy. You were legit fed with a silver spoon and given countless opportunities. You just didn't take them. So what now? You're mad because you're 33 and have nothing to show? Like, bro, what generational curse are you breaking, my nigga? Laugh out loud. You couldn't even get into college if it wasn't for daddy's help. And you even took advantage of that and flunked out. And then she has multiple exclamation points. And she says, you took advantage of everything your whole life and burnt bridges. And now you're mad because after all the lies and disrespect you've spewed, we're tired of being nice. And so under the original post where Kerrion leaked the 45-second clip of a much larger conversation with his dad, where, he says his dad threatened him, which we know it wasn't a physical threat. It was a I'm pissed off, you getting on my nerves, I'm frustrated, and now I'm about to curse you out type of threat. Under that post, Kennedy said, you are sick in the head. If you want to post stuff like a real person, then be real in all caps and post the whole thing. You gaslight people and only want to show how they react. With the allegations you have been spewing, I would cuss your ass out too. You even did that to me, and me is in all caps, and I have screenshots. So if you want to be childish and pull stuff out, then be prepared when your siblings do it right back. You don't even consider us siblings because we have different mothers. Laugh out loud. That's what you legit said to me. As an 18-year-old, you told me that. Like you even threatened your own birth mother because she didn't give you money. And she has like the dollar signs. But laugh out loud. You don't want to post those things. Sad. You continue to hurt people that really did try to help you. And so then Kennedy responds to someone who commented to her post and was basically defending Kerrion. And she says, I'm sorry, but you're not family. You have no idea what Kerrion has ruined and done to not only his parents, but his siblings. Don't ever speak on my mother nor my father. I'm done with it. You don't know us. So your speculations don't really have hold. You truly only see what we allow you to see. You have no idea what we've been through. And so then we have Kerrion entering the conversation with Kennedy. And so first he responds to someone named Carl Jackson. And he says, she out of pocket, half-blooded, and can't even show any respect. They shut me out, and now I'm standing in my truth. They want to pop up sad. And then he responds directly to Kennedy and says, you don't care about me. You got my last name. Add what else you want. You are a complete liar. You've done all the gaslighting, calling me a crackhead online. I'm done with life, the verbal abuse and lies of this God-loving family. And he has God-loving in quotes. And Kennedy replies back, laugh out loud, okay. And then she says, half-blooded, laugh out loud, wow, okay. And then Kerrion says, always talking shit just like dad, full of fake love. You gotta deal with God. Now I'm done. And then Kennedy replies, if you're done, then why are you continuing? Laugh out loud. Reach out then, Kerrion, since you say you have been. Laugh out loud. And then later that evening was when Kirk Franklin took to Twitter to issue an apology to his fans, but not to Kerrion. And so it doesn't appear that any of the other siblings have responded, which is probably for the best. And so what do you guys think about Kerrion referring to his siblings as half-blooded, like they are not his real siblings? Now keep in mind, they all got the same daddy, right? Except for Carrington, who was already Tammy's daughter. She already had her when her and Kirk met. But the other two are definitely your brothers, okay? So you can't be around here talking about brother and sister. You can't be around here calling them half-blooded when y'all came from the same man, all right? So I hate when people say half-sister, half-brother, step-sister, step-brother. Child, if y'all grew up together, were raised together, got some DNA together, then y'all are brothers and sisters, and leave the half this, no, just stop it. That's only making situations worse. And for Kerrion to be 33 years old and that's the route that he wants to go, that's a problem. So then I came across this article, I believe it was in the Chicago Sun-Times, where they covered the Kirk Franklin story. And so they brought in a relationship expert by the name of Love McPherson, and she was asked to speak on the ongoing saga. And so what she had to say was similar to what I was thinking about the whole thing. And so she said that, we were given a backstage pass to a few seconds of a 30-year plus relationship. And she says it's not fair to judge anyone based on that, but then she went on and added that we could all learn something from it. And I do agree that this is a teachable moment for anyone that is going through a similar situation. And so she says a toxic relationship between two grown men isn't the same as a toxic relationship between a parent and a minor child. A series of public spats between the former, she's given examples at this point, former political advisor Kellyanne Conway and her 16-year-old daughter a few months ago raised alarms about many children, raised a lot of alarms by many children's advocates. And then she says that the teenager posted, on video a TikTok in January alleging that her mother has been physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. In one video, Conway can be heard cursing at her daughter. In another, police arrived to investigate. So the Franklin's family's trouble has been fodder for memes and jokes on social media. That doesn't mean that we can't have serious conversations, to use as examples and issues in our own lives, and that toxic emotions and toxic relationships take an emotional toll, and that they can also become deadly. And then she gives, Marvin Gaye and his father's situation. And remember, the father killed Marvin Gaye, during the middle of a argument. And then somebody had said, I think it was Ricky Smiley, when he gave his commentary, was basically like, there are a whole lot of parents that are in a grave right now because of conflict between them and their children ended up killing them, and vice versa. And so these things, if you don't separate yourself from these situations, there can be dire consequences. So it's not cute, it's not funny, and it needs to be taken seriously. And basically, he feels that Kirk Franklin should remove himself from the situation and let Kerrion go on about his business and do whatever he's going to do and be whoever he wants to be, because Kirk has done his part. He has raised him. He's given him the tools to succeed, and that he can't continue to hold Kerrion's hand for the rest of his life. And then another example that they gave in the article was a 22-year-old Louisiana man was charged with manslaughter last year after he allegedly shot his father to death during an argument over Chinese takeout. Several television shows, including Lifetime Movie Network, I Killed My BFF, chronicled the 2012 murder of 16-year-old Skylar Niece by her two high school friends. And that was a true story. And so perhaps the most famous case, and then that's when they talk about the Marvin Gaye murder in 1984. And so they talk about the tape with Kerrion. And then Kirk's apology, on Twitter, and saying that, the elder Franklin explained that he has tried for many years to rectify the toxic relationship through counseling. And he said a therapist had been on the call earlier, but his son never played that part. And then Kerrion Franklin later asked fans not to crucify his father, and saying that my father has been speaking very mean and manipulatively to me for 15 years now. And so Kirk Franklin admits that he lost his temper. And when that happens, according to McPherson, you should always go back and apologize to your child and explain the emotions that you were feeling at that time. Otherwise, tension can escalate. And then she also adds that you must walk away, but admits that isn't always easy to do, especially when you really love your child and you really want what's best for them. And in your head, you're saying, if I just do this, they'll get it, they'll understand, and that'll fix it. But sometimes, like if you really don't know what's wrong with your child and you don't really understand why they feel, like they can tell you they feel the way they do, but you really can't grasp why they feel that way, I can definitely see how frustration can set in. And so she says sometimes, and then she says a toxic relationship doesn't necessarily mean you don't care for someone. It means that the two of you aren't good for each other. If someone continuously puts you down, keeps you off balance, and leaves you feeling bad about yourself whenever you encounter them, then you'd probably be better off letting them go. Sometimes our deepest pains come from the people we love the most or claim to love the most, McPherson said, but there are always things that you can do. And she says, first, ask yourself if the person, a mother or father, for example, is even capable of fulfilling the job description of a parent. Sometimes mental illness, trauma, and addiction get in the way. If they are not, face the truth and accept that you cannot fix them. Grieve over the loss if you must. Otherwise, you will continue to traumatize yourself by expecting something that the person is not capable of giving. And I definitely agree with that. And so she goes on to say, try to separate the person from the role, but understand that the father can't give you the protection you need. The mother won't nurture you in a way that makes you feel loved, and a child might be more distant than you like. Know your guilt strings and don't allow yourself to be puppeted. Pay attention to patterns of manipulation and make sure you don't fall into the trap because you feel guilty. Loving yourself and taking care of yourself is important too. Finally, live your own life rather than living the life someone else wants you to live. Kirk Franklin acknowledged that he isn't perfect. It's a safe bet that his son isn't perfect either because no one is. So then a few days after, the whole blow up, Kirk and Tammy appeared on the Tamron Hall show, to publicly discuss the conversation that took place with Kerrion. And so, and to address the accusations of parental abuse, because at this point, the whole molestation thing had not hit the wire yet. So Kirk opened up about the challenges that he and Kerrion have and how they were early indications of a need for deeper help. That was the term he used. He shared his son has been in and out of therapy for more than 20 years, which would place Kerrion around, 12, 13 years old when they first started having problems, but noted that as he got older, his disrespect became more aggressive. And so actually he says more than 20 years. So it seems like shortly after Tammy and Kirk got married, that's when Kerrion started changing, which leads me back to the part that he was just upset that his father had gotten married. Now he has a sibling. Now they're having children. And that it was really, they were taking his dad away from him. And then we don't know really what was going on in the house with the mom. So, there could be just a lot, under the surface. And so they were quoted as saying, now that he's about to be 33 as a grown man, the relationship at times can become very agitated and very frustrated, but I'm not going to stop trying to help, Kirk said. He's my son, he's my firstborn, and I never want him to feel what I felt not having a father in my life. It's important for me because it's important for me because what if that call is the call that changes things? So he's saying that he's going to always answer the phone when Kerrion calls because he still has this hope and this belief that they'll be able to have that father-son bond again. Kirk continued to express his love for his son and assured viewers that there has been no physical or parental abuse. When asked about his respect for his son, he explained that while he does respect Kerrion as a grown man, he is still his father. And so he says, I respect Kerrion. I'm not Kerrion's equal. Though I'm not his equal, I'm his dad. And when you talk to me, especially about things that you say that you want from me, I can't hear you when you are extremely aggressive when we're communicating. And that's why a lot of times Kerrion and I haven't talked sometimes for a year or two. And so then Kirk went on to talk about his fans and said that, the fans have every right to be disappointed in his use of violent and explicit language. He even expressed disappointment in himself, but he acknowledged that he's human with a history of toxic, challenging, turbulent relationships between himself and his son. And he says, in that fight, it can become so difficult that my humanity, unfortunately, that day won. He says, And I'm going to keep trying while still continuing to admit that I am an imperfect man fighting to serve a perfect God. And so the fact that they hadn't talked in a year or two, and then suddenly Kerrion comes out and all of this is taking place, it kind of supports that something triggered him to make him like, come out this way and just want to really drag these people, want to do an interview. And so that just really makes me, convinces me that the attention that he's receiving from the OWN network is what triggered him. And then there are those who think that he's merely clout chasing and trying to build his brand, his swank media, because he hashtagged that in some of his posts. And so, he's trying to find his footing. And maybe he has come up with this production company and this is something that he really wants. And he just doesn't know how to ask for the help, ask for the financial resources. Maybe he hasn't shown a business plan or shown how he's going to make this successful. Maybe Kirk has invested in other businesses that fell apart. In the video, where he accuses his dad of, inappropriate behavior with him, he was homeless at the time. So it's like, did they provide you with a place to live and then you got evicted, got kicked out? So it's just a lot. Everybody wants to, the people that want to support Kerrion seem to be overlooking or either blaming Kirk, that Kerrion is homeless, that he's possibly on drugs, that he can't get his business up and running without, this type of drama or trying to ruin his father's brand. Like, how are you going to ruin your father's brand and then think God is going to bless your brand is beyond me. And so definitely a lot to consider there. And so then after Kirk and Tammy did their little interview, the mama jumped on Kerrion's mother. Her name is Sean Ewing. And she came out, to basically defend Kirk and to support some of the things that Kirk has said about Kerrion, being hard to deal with, experiencing challenges, having gone through counseling. And so she was on a show called, the host name was Erica Foslier English, and it was on the Heartbeat podcast. And so she said, we're here because some private information was leaked and Kirk kind of lost his control. And this is the Ewing lady that's talking. And then I think it's the mother that picks up and says, we talk about cancel culture. And I was thinking, I can't leave Kirk out here by himself on this one. And so then she goes on to admit that Kerrion is a bit rebellious and has made claims that he believes his father is trying to take his life. And you guys remember that was one of the posts on Instagram. And as his mother, that put her in a difficult predicament, and she's tried her best to resolve this matter privately. And then she says, I'm not saying that my son is not hurting from us being teenage parents. I'm not saying my son doesn't have a testimony. What I am saying is that you were not abandoned. No one abdicated their responsibility towards you. You are loved, Kirk Franklin. I will look at the camera and say it. You are loved. We support you then. We support you now. We support you tomorrow. But there's a way to deal with it. And then she went on to say that all we've tried to do as parents is work through the issue, get our son to a point of being a productive citizen in society, as well as having a good life. But things kind of didn't go that way, and that's okay because families go through things and not understand the true history of counseling, therapy, godly counseling, holding Kerrion responsible, holding Kirk responsible, holding myself responsible. And Ewing then made it a point to express sympathy for both Kirk and her son, then asked listeners to hear both sides of the story before jumping to turn our backs on the gospel superstar. So during the interview, Kerrion's mom ventured into, so she works for like a abuse center or something. And I don't know, I really didn't understand why she went the direction that she did. Or maybe she was trying to justify something that Kerrion may have told her that she didn't respond to in the way that he wanted. But she started saying that, she learned working in these crisis centers that we can't always believe people or believe women when they come out and say that things have happened to them. And that her thing is, if you come to her and tell her this happened to me, then her response is, let's go to the police. Let's take this to the police and let it be dealt with appropriately. Don't wait years and years and years later and then come out and say that this happened to me. And then she seemed torn between victims being able to wait however long that they want to wait, but then it kind of weakens their story and make people less likely to show sympathy for you if you come out later and say something happened to you 20 years ago. So I don't know if she was trying to not say that Kerrion had came to her and told her that something had happened, and because he wasn't willing to go to the police, she didn't believe him. Like, I was so confused by that part of the conversation. I'm going to be honest with you guys. And so then, after that, whole interview with her, we had several celebrities that gave their opinion, that came to their, Kirk Franklin's defense. And then I also thought it was interesting that in the comments on Kerrion's IG post, that there were a lot of kids of famous, like gospel artists, famous pastors and stuff, popular pastors, that were commenting under his post. And, for the most part, they were telling him, take this off of social media. If you need somebody to talk to, you can talk to me. This isn't the way to go. Your dad is a great dad, that type of thing. And so, for the most part, even the celebrity children that reached out, were basically saying, this isn't the way to do this. So Snoop Dogg, his crazy self, he took to his Instagram on Monday and shared a screenshot of Franklin's hit song, Imagine Me, but it was Photoshopped, with some additional words in the title to fit, with the jokes, becoming Imagine Me beating your ass. In his caption, just ridiculous. Then the rapper Plies, who's often been compared to Kirk Franklin as far as their physical appearance, he came out and said, people think that the two of us look alike. Plies take the rap and says, that it was really him on the audio cursing out the sun. And then Ricky Smiley, he used his morning show platform, to engage his co-host in an impassioned discussion about the situation, which, he said is personal to him because he has been through similar situations with his kids. And he really didn't hold back and said that once your kids are grown, you don't have to entertain them and their nonsense, and that there are too many kids out here that need a father figure, for you to be wasting your time trying to make an adult grow up and act right. And so, and as I said earlier, he touched on about, the number of kids in jail, for killing their parents, and that things can go horribly wrong by you trying to force a grown person, to do the right thing or to see things your way when they obviously see things a different way. And then Steve Harvey used his platform to say, Kirk has always been there for him, and, anytime that he's wanted to talk to him, and that he had reached out to Kirk Franklin to, give him some words of encouragement. And he says that, this is twofold. The betrayal of the son by posting the audio, which is only a snippet of a bigger problem. And then the second part is the church with its sanctimonious attitude. Like, Kirk, didn't have the right to get angry and speak to his son the way that he did. And he says that Kirk was a sinner before he got saved. None of us are perfect. And then he mentions, that nephew Tommy does the prank calls on his morning show. and that a lot of times those crank calls are to Christians, are to deacons in the church, to pastors, and that, Tommy pushes those people to the brink of cursing him out. And we've all heard it and been like, oh my God, like, did the deacon really just say that to nephew Tommy? And so he says that all sons have met that wrath of their father at some point in time, that they just didn't put it on social media for the world to hear or to try to harm their father, who is a public figure. Then the comedian Monique chimed in and says that we need to look at people as people, not as celebrities. And if a grown-ass person don't want to do right in someone else's house, then get on about your business, that this isn't nothing new. So stop acting like it is. Stop being appalled and like, oh my God, I can't believe Kirk Franklin did that. And so for now, it seems that the story has, is dying down, and people aren't, there haven't been any new releases that have come out. And perhaps Kerrion realizes that no one is going to pay him $75,000 because child, unwind with Tasha K saying that she reached out to Kerrion to interview him and get his side of the story. And that Kerrion sent her a contract and with instructions on how to cash app him $37,500 now, and then when to send the second half of the $37,000 to make up the $75,000. He pissed Tasha K off with that. She was like, is this, I think she called him a drug addict. Don't quote me on that. But she was like, he has lost his mind and he think that she about to cash out him some money. Like, she be gonna send him that $37,000 and then don't hear from Kerrion again. Then she got to sue him and chase him down to get her money. So she said she's no longer interested, in talking to him, and he can go have several seats because ain't nobody gonna pay him that kind of money. And then I was wondering, he had said that he already had did an interview. And so maybe them people didn't send the money. And that's why we haven't seen that interview. And so, I don't know, maybe the right person will reach out to him, or perhaps he realizes that, he isn't getting the response, that he wanted from the people he wants it from. The accusations that he has leveled against his father are serious and should not be taken lightly. Like, I'm not making light of the fact that he says that he was abused as a child, but he needs to go to the proper authorities, not social media, to do a smear campaign. And if they are untrue, he needs to answer for them and the harm that he is causing his father, mom, stepmom, as well as his siblings. And so we can all have our opinions and speculation, but only the Franklin family knows the truth. The only thing I can point to is the timing of Kirk's marriage with the start of Kerrion's behavior problems. Everyone agrees that counseling has been at the forefront of their lives. It doesn't matter how much counseling you go through, however. If you're withholding information, counseling won't work. If you're not willing to accept what the counseling is revealing about your character and perceived reality, it won't work. If you decide to self-medicate, which could mean drinking, drugging, creating your own narrative, it will not work. So the fact that Kirk is insisting, that they get back into counseling and they do counseling, if the counseling ain't worked in 20 years, that may not be the answer. And I'm kind of inclined to side with Steve. As hard as it is to walk away from your child once they turn 18, you really have no legal obligation to them. And if they are destroying your life and your happiness and the lives and happiness of the other members of the family, sometimes you got to sacrifice that one person for the greater good of everybody else. And maybe in that sacrifice, that person will come around, Kirk, and you will get that phone call that you're dreaming of. But you have to understand that you cannot force that phone call to come. So at this point, the ball is in Kerrion's court. The family shouldn't respond anymore to his allegations. There has to be self-accountability and a reckoning. And as one of my former pastors used to ask at the end of each service, are all minds clear? And if not, continue the discussion in the comments, because this is it for me. All right. So go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.